So in every discussion, we're supposed to talk about the culture connection boxes that we find in the reading and or Doyle's supplement videos. For this discussion, I'm going to talk about two of the culture boxes and Doyle's supplement video for this week. The first box, or culture connection box, is on page 103, and this is the one about the man and his wife, where his wife can remember a bunch of different dates and specific times and everything else, and he can only remember vague stuff, doesn't remember every little thing. The reason why I chose this connection piece is because I can relate a lot to it. I can remember a lot of specific times, specific dates, things like that. I don't really have to write down a lot of appointment times, appointment dates, things like that, just because I remember them so well. But my brother isn't. My brother doesn't remember to tie his shoes in the morning if he doesn't write it down. It's very interesting how I can remember all this, but my brother can't. It's weird. And this just comes from the fact that I like to be organized. My mother pushed organization with me more than she pushed with my brother. But then again, also my family works this way. Half of them remember things like this, and half of them don't. My friend's family never remembers anything. But my family's more often than not able to remember all these specific dates, all these specific times and things, aside from my brother. He's like the oddball out, whatever. But my friend's family, they have a hard time remembering what time appointments are, where they're supposed to be, when what times we have decided for events and things like that. Excuse me. The second part, or the second culture connection box I chose to talk about today, was on page 88. This is the one about the family that's always together, and how even though the narrator of the story isn't with them all the time, and he has his urban life and has his alone time, excuse me again, he still seeks the family aspect, still wants to be around his family. I found that I can relate to this connection piece as well, super well. In my family, I have a lot of people who live in my house. So as a result, we're always with each other. We're always around each other. But we also have our own space, spaces like our bedrooms and other areas in the house that we like to go to just to get away from people. But in the end, we're always around each other. We always like to come back together. We all eat together. We play cards, play darts, occasionally watch TV together. We may not be doing a whole lot of talking all the time or something like that, but because we get to do all this stuff and we're always around each other, at least in the same vicinity, it makes it to where we're a super close family. And again, we know everything about each other. We love each other, and we're always around each other. The last thing I want to talk about is Doyle's supplement video. In this video, he talked about distances and cultures and climates. I found it really interesting just because 3 years ago I moved from Washington to Oregon for school, and I knew what the culture and climate was like on the other side of the mountains from where I lived, because I live in eastern Washington, and so crossing the mountains, western Washington is like a whole nother galaxy compared to the Tri-Cities, because the Tri-Cities, that's where I'm from, is a farming city. It's very dry. It's very family oriented. It's kind of a retirement town. It's very quiet. Whereas you cross the mountain and everything's wet and drippy, and everyone's moving so fast with all the highways and overstates and all kinds of weird roads and one-way streets that change every other time. It's really weird. And then when I moved from the Tri-Cities to Washington, I had to go through the gorge. this is like a really weird little climate, culture, timeline, I guess you could call it. Because in the Tri-Cities, you can see the same thing all the way through until you get over into Oregon. Eastern Oregon and Eastern Washington are like super identical, whereas Western Washington and Western Oregon are super identical. But as soon as you cross that mountain line, they're as different as night and day. Eastern Washington and Oregon are super dry, super quiet, slow-moving. They're not so much of the hustle-bustle, big city feel. But when you cross over the mountains, you've got Portland and Salem and then Eugene, and it just keeps going all the way down the coast. All the way down. Everything's super fast, super hustle and bustle. There's one-way streets in every town. There's highways going straight through and everything. Where on the east side, they're all super, like, yeah, there's highways, but everybody's kind of slow and melancholy. Just kind of meandering down the eastern side of the state, because it's, again, it's dry, there's kind of boring scenery unless you're from there, and then I find it super pretty, and it just inflicts a calming sense on you, and you just kind of go slower, and it sometimes, to some people it feels like it takes forever, but for me it's nice. I like going through that slow part of the drive just because it's a nice calming time. And like I was saying, once you cross that mountain line and from the east side to the west side, it's like a whole nother galaxy. It rains all the time, there's people moving around super fast. You don't have that small town feel as much. It's not like, I know in places there are, but in general, like, there's a lot of really big cities, whereas on the eastern side there's two in Washington. There's Spokane and there's Kennewick, and you can't really count Yakima just because it's in the middle of the state and it's central Washington, but I don't know very many other than Pendleton on the Oregon side that are really big, and maybe Bend. I don't know if you can count Bend, but like it's just the difference between east and west on these two states is a culture and distance in itself. But yeah, that's what I got for you. I hope you enjoy, and I hope you have a good week.